Welcome to Hanging Out with Robert, that's me. This video contains things that I encounter throughout the day. If for some reason I complete a task and you would like to see the details, you can click on the link in the description area below. This video also contains tips and tricks that I learned throughout the years. I plan on leaving this video accessible for about 30 days. After that, you can view it through my Patreon account. Thank you very much for watching. About to get started. It is almost cool enough put my sweatshirt on. So I think I'm gonna put my sweatshirt on, move this car out of the way, get this car in, and I think I'm gonna work on the clean stuff first, which is the starting issue. And then from there, work on some of the mounts and stuff. This vehicle has an intermittent no start. And I think it's a no crank issue with that. However, somebody's rigged the starting system up with a weird switch and button. So you turn the ignition on, you flip this switch, then you hit start, and it starts up. Then you flip the switch back down and closes that off. So that's a problem. He said it's having no crank, so I think it may be a battery cable issue. So let's see what the battery cables look like. Just to be on the safe side, we're probably going to do the magic juice as well as the battery cable, but somebody's got this battery cable thing changed, even though this doesn't look. When you got something like this, that little thin piece right there is all the gauge you have on there, and that battery connection is loose. That may be his issue. I don't like something that thin as far as depending on it to carry your battery issue. Not sure what this wire here is. Trap. It didn't have a battery hold down, but he's got a screw there that keeps the battery in position. So let's tighten up this, which is a disconnect, quick disconnect. Just screw that in tighter. Flip that over. That makes that tight. Now it's not loose, but that's still just barely a little cable to keep that on, which again, I do not like. I'd rather have a dedicated battery post. We're going to change that mount there, change the transmission torque mount, change the front engine mount. That should smooth this car out as far as being able to drive. So let me go ahead and have a little chat with them, go from there. So we're going to kick this off doing the stablant treatment. I really don't like messing with this electronic stuff if you don't have to, because once it starts acting up, it starts acting up. I think his problem is probably these flimsy battery cables, but we're going to go ahead and do the stablant and the battery cables just to kind of double coverage here. So I'm going to try to start the car with the antenna ring unplugged to see if it'll crank and not start, because I think it's a crank no start issue when your computer module connections are bad. It's an immobilizer deal, so I think it still does crank. So let's try that, see what happens, and move forward. Well, this is a new one on me. Never seen one of those before, but it appears, man, I don't know what they did that for. Let me get that screw out of there and get this collar sleeve off of here. We got more stuff going on here. I got a little springy thing there. I don't know what that came off of. Piece of plastic here. And I got another vehicle kill switch here. Anyway, let me get this collar off and see if we can unplug the antenna ring and see if the car will start. By the looks of this, none of the screws on this thing was holding this thing in place. It's just pressed up there, and maybe clipped to the top piece might have been holding it up. Anyway, let's move forward. We now have access to the antenna ring and the plug. So I'm going to try to start the car, see if it cranks and start with it like it is, and then I'm going to unplug the antenna ring and see how it reacts. We already know that the car starts like this, so I'm going to unplug the antenna ring, turn the ignition on, flip that switch, push that button, and see if it cranks. Antenna ring unplugged. I got the switch flipped, and I'm going to push the button, see if it cranks, and see if it starts. It cranks, but it doesn't start. Alright, so when you have this issue, you have a crank no start issue. He's got a no crank issue, so this is probably not related. Let me go ahead and get these parts out, put the magic juice on them, per his request. As with working with any electronic components, it's probably best to disconnect the negative on the battery before you start doing any of this stuff, disconnecting these parts. So I'm going to go disconnect the battery and take these parts out to put the juice on them. I also guess I have to unplug this switch. Not sure if I need to mark which one is in what position, but I'll try to put it back the way it is. Man, this antenna ring looks like it doesn't have any wear on it, no key jabs and stuff. It looks kind of new, but it's got tape on it for some reason. I'm going to leave that alone and put a drop on each one of those 2 pins down in there. This new phone don't like focusing like I like it to. It's like 3 pins in there, or 4 pins actually. Yeah, there's 4 pins. So the Stabling comes with a paintbrush and a dropper. You could do it either way. Paintbrush will probably use less. Drip it on the end of the brush and paint the pins. Electrical contact enhancer. It has 75% alcohol, so it probably dries fast. So I'm put it on there and plug it back in. Somebody's had this out before, so I don't know what's going on there. It looked like it come out of the salvage yard. Anyway, I got the pins treated. I'm gonna plug this back in. All right, I got this one out. This one didn't have any weird markings on it, but let's go ahead and wet these pins and put it back in. Got that unit back up there. Got that unit back up there. Got the antenna ring plugged back in. Let's go ahead and hook up this kill switch down here. Hook up the battery, see if it starts. And it started. So we're good to go on that. Need to figure out why that SRS light's lit. Scan and check that out. And move on to the mounts. Reset that service light as well. I got my Vita computer with me, so I'll do that before I leave. Somebody put this center console in without hooking that center console into the bottom, so this whole trim moves up and down. So I'm gonna hook that in real quick so that's properly installed. I did something and I seen this whole thing move, so that's what made me think that wasn't secure. Another issue he's having is the seat won't move forward with this button, but it will move back with it. You notice the switch because you could push a memory button and it'll move forward, but it won't move forward with the switch. So I'm gonna see if I have one of these in my car. I think I do. Not sure if it's a driver's side. If so, we'll replace that. Next, we're going to replace these battery end terminal pieces. I picked up a pair from the local auto parts store. Hopefully that'll solve these no cranking issues. You could probably just bolt the cable into there But I went on ahead and cut it off, cut the wire back enough to put that in there. Then I'm gonna put this on the other side of it and put it on there. Let me show you. All right, I have this end on here. The B cables are connected, the main cable's connected. Occasionally I'll get one of these and this cable will slide out of here kind of easy. If that happens, this little plate that connects these two bolts, I just flip it upside down so that they push into the cable instead of cup the cable like that. So that's in. I'm gonna try to get it under this intake tube. I don't know why it's running on top of the intake tube. Then I'm gonna do the ground wire as well. I had to loosen that nut quite a bit to get that cable to go all the way down on the post. Now I'm going to tighten that up, and that positive one should be good to go. Here we are, folks. Added that battery post there, added that battery post there, got rid of all of that stuff there. Let's go in and see if the car will start. Ignition's on. Contact. Oh, sound like the starter stuck. Heard the starter clicking. That's starting. Whenever you start one of these Volvos, you always want to let it idle for at least a minute before you cut it back off. So I'm going to shut it off here in a minute or two, shut it all down, and make sure it restarts. And it started again for the second time. Let me reset the clock. The clock is now officially on a bad time here. At the clock reset, and we should be good to go. I do have a seat controller. Mine is black, whereas that one, actually, that is shaped totally different. This is an 851, and that is a V70 so that won't fit. But again, he can control the forward movement by using one of the memory buttons. Even though these screws is not holding this piece up, I'm gonna put them up there for screw storage. Next, we have these couple of mounts and this cam seal cap to put on there. 3 mounts in the cam seal cap. Now, sometimes people put a cam seal in there, but you should have a cap on there to stop dust from coming in there. So we're going to put that cap on there, and then we're going to change this mount here. We have that plug-in, so that's a backup for the cam seal. Next, we're going to take this spark plug cover off, remove this mount, and replace it. You have to take the cover off because one of the bolts is under the cover. So I took all the screws out of the top of the cover. I went to go unclip this side, and I see this timing belt is missing a chunk out of the front of the cover there. All this should be covered up so you don't see timing belt area in there. You don't want it falling in there, jamming up the belt, and it'll have a clip on it. Like this side back here. So you see that clip right there? That clips into the side of the cover, but front piece is missing. Anyway, this timing belt was done recently. Now this is a sticker originally from Volvo, and it can be grooved like I just did with my fingernail. So you really should write on this with a ballpoint pen so that you can press the information in there so it never rubs off. So I'm gonna grab my ballpoint pen and trace that in. So I traced that with my ink pen, so if the writing ever wears away, you'll be able to see the indentation on the sticker like you can there with my fingernail. Alright, let me go ahead and take this cover off and get this mount replaced. In this video, we're going to be replacing this upper engine torque mount. As you can see, it is torn there all the way through. This helps keep the engine stable as the vehicle shifts gears and brakes. Helps it run a little smoother, holds the engine in place, reduces some of the wear on the lower mounts. So let's go ahead and get that replaced. First thing you want to do is remove the cam cover top that covers the spark plugs and the coils. and the front timing belt cover because it snaps in there. Actually, this one is broken. That has those 3 tabs right there. They're supposed to interlock in that, but somebody has broken the holes in there. Anyway, take the 8 screws out, hold a clip here, take this side loose, clip on the back, kind of a spring clip, lift that up, pull it away, then you maneuver this up and out of the way. So now you can get it all 4 bolts on top of that mount. You got 2 in the back, 2 in the front. Sometimes you have a ground wire. Whenever you put this dust cover back on, make sure you don't trap any of these wires. This wire should be under there, but anyway, don't trap any of these wires in here. You could damage them and cause misfires. Ask me how I know. There's also supposed to be a rubber grommet here that cover keeps things from crawling in and out of there. This one is missing. Just a piece of rubber that sits there, holds these wires in place, and stops critters from crawling in there and making a nest. Anyway, next we're going to put a 15 on one side, 13 on the other side, I believe. Break that bolt loose, remove that bolt. Then we're going to use 14 millimeters to remove these 4 bolts on top here. Got that screw out of there, 13 on this side, 15 on the other side. Now you could hold this, maneuver this out of the way, but if you want to get this arm totally out of the way, you can take the 14 millimeter bolt out the bottom. I'm not going to do that. I could reach these 14s just by maneuvering this a little bit. So let me break all 4 of those loose and remove them. Take all 4 of these bolts out. The 2 on the outside is shorter than the 2 against the engine, so keep them in their proper orientation. Now lift the mount up out of the way and set the replacement in place. I've seen several variations of this mount. I don't know if there's a right or wrong, but if you have a problem like this one, the holes are not lining up, just pull the engine forward and stick the bolts in and get them started. You should be able to pull the engine forward with your hand, just pull it back. It should maneuver a little bit, as long as your front or rear engine mount's not totally blown. You may want to put that screw in place in the mount before you set it down on the engine. It's a little harder to get in once everything is set down. So let me go ahead and pull the engine toward the front of the car like this. You can see it move there, and get those screws started. Make sure you get all 4 bolts started before you tighten any down. I'd probably torque them to about 35 foot-pounds or 42 Newton meters. Tighten that bolt up there, I would say 25 foot-pounds, 32 Newton meters. And then put your cover back on, you'll be all done. These screws up top, they're just dust screws, so don't torque them down, just snug them. And you could put anti-seize on them so they go in and out easier. And this mount is best if it's not solid polyurethane. It won't send vibration into your vehicle unless you load it before you install it. Basically what you do is you start the car, you put it in drive, set the parking brake, then come out here and tighten this bolt, and that'll load it in a certain position so you don't get too much vibration if it's solid. This one is hollow, but it is polyurethane. So that's it. Put that engine cover back on and you're all done. When you put this top cover on, make sure it clips there and clips down on the back side so that it's all the way in place. Again, these are just dust cover screws. Just snug them down. Don't over tighten them and you'll be all done. Looked like somebody either put the wrong tube there or routed it wrong, because it's all twisted up going into there, that top PCV. Also, this turbo tube doesn't have the right bracket on the clamp there. I'm suspecting that this car may have had a cylinder head job at one time. Somebody got some stuff all screwed up in here. Anyway, that's it. Let's get to the next mount. And here's this old mount with this rubber piece totally torn out. Twisted, torn. I should be able to get that out with my finger. Hurrah! And there it is. For some reason, it had a lot of stress pushing forward on it. I'm gonna look at these mounts under the engine, see if there's something going on with them. Next mount we're gonna replace is the transmission torque mount. This goes under the car like this. It's got two 14mm bolts to the transmission there. These two bolts are 18mm nuts attached to the subframe. And when this mount is bad, you get hard shifts. You can feel the car shift from second to third. When this mount's good, the shifts are crisp and faster. You don't feel any lash in the shifting. So this is easy to replace if you get a poly one. Sometimes you can feel vibration in the steering wheel when you're at a stop idling. If you get the OEM one, you normally don't feel that. So a lot of times when I driving the car with one of these in there, I end up shifting into neutral if I stay stopped long, because I just don't like that vibration. So to access that mount, you put the car up on ramps. Is the easiest thing to do. That mount is right here. See the two 18s and two 14s on the side. You don't have to brace nothing, just take those two 18s loose, take those two 14s loose on the side, and maneuver the mount out and put the new one in. Let's raise it up a little bit, get under there and do that. Decided to dig his jack out instead of dig mine out. What a task that was. And his jack is messed up. Somebody jacked the car up wrong and crushed the jack closed. That's supposed to be open, so I've been beating on it with a hammer, trying to get it open. It looked like they also bent it. This normally didn't have rub marks on it. Let me go ahead and finish opening that up so that it fits properly in the car so it could jack the car right. You guys should check these. I find these bent all the time where it's not safe to use them. That's more like how that should be. So when you put it under the car and put it in the bar that's set to jack it, that'll fit. If that's closed, you can't get the bar in there. Let me show you what I mean. The proper jacking point on here is that post, and this jack should fit in there like that. So that post has to fit in there and hook right, and this has to be open enough. So be careful with that. These jacks are already unsafe. Well, these are safer than the 850 ones, but you don't want to make them more unsafe. Let me jack the car up some. Set your parking brake if it works. Put something in the wheels on the other side. Stop the car from rolling. Jack the car up as safe as you can. Put a jack stand under it. Lower the vehicle on the jack stand. Either one or both sides. Don't think it matters. Come under here. Get under the car to access the bolts. Take your breaker bar. Break those two 18mm loose. And then break those two 14s loose. Sometimes this screw will be in the way of a tool from breaking one of those 14s loose. Do all you can not to disturb those screws. They screw the oil pan into the engine, and they have thread sealer on them, so they can leak if you pull one out just to get those bolts off and then put it back. So don't do that. Get you a long 14mm boxed in wrench. I have one here that I'm gonna use with a cheater. Put it on there and break these loose. So let me get those two broke loose, remove those two, and maneuver that mount out of there. These two have washers on them. Those two do not. A lot of times those things are so tight that I have to use another boxed in wrench on there as a cheater. Hook it on there like that, and then grab the end of it and pull it forward to break those loose. I got both of them broke loose now. So let me get these removed and unscrew those and show you what the mount coming out. Decided to time lapse this to show you guys getting this bracket off. So I'm taking the mount out. I got the 18s out already, the two nuts, taking the 14s out, and I pull the mount down. I grab the mount just to check the bushing, see how worn it was. So when I went to place the new mount in place, I could not get those 14 millimeter bolt holes lined up on the transmission without the mount hitting the bottom of the transmission. Well, I'd never experienced that before. So I had to pull that thing down and compare it with the old mount, and the bracket on the back side of the mount is actually different on this new mount. So this new mount was ordered for a front-wheel drive car, and the old mount, of course, is for a all-wheel drive car. So I'm going to have to take the back part of this off and switch it over so that I can get this thing installed, because this new mount will not go on without hitting the bottom of the transmission. With a 15 and a 13, I took this peg out of here. With a 15 and a 14, I took the peg out of there. Then I took this old piece, put it over a large socket, and drove the bushing out of there because the bushing was glued to the metal. I took this 30 millimeter socket, held the old thing over there, took a 10 millimeter socket, put it on there, and drove this out into the socket. So this was hollow. Then I used a bolt to scrape the rubber out of there. Then I took the new thing and got it off the bracket. I pushed this metal sleeve with a 10 millimeter socket in until it fell down in the socket. Then I pulled it apart, and then I pressed it on here. Now let's go and put it on the new bracket. So I'm going to put this on the new bracket like this so the hump is up. And I'm going to slide the bolt in there. And I'm not going to tighten it until I have these two tight. These 14s in here tight. Then I'm going to tighten this one. So let me go ahead and screw that on there. Let me see if I have the washers for these 18 millimeter nuts. I did at one point. I don't know if it's in this bag, man. Nope, I think I actually shipped those to a guy that I sent manual hardware to. So you take this, you hook it in there, you set the washers in place, and you put these 18 millimeter nuts on here. Those are not torqued as tight as I thought they would be. I would probably torque them to 35 foot-pounds, 43 Newton meters. And these 14s, I'd probably torque them to 35 Newton meters or 28 foot-pounds. Let's get these tightened up here. If you could put an electric tool on there to speed this up. I need a floor jack to replace this front engine mount, but I don't have one, and he don't have a neighbor handy that has one, so we're checking on that. He's also considering replacing the starters since it popped twice since we did the electrical work, and his cranking issue may be a bad starter. So, trying to cover all his bases while I'm in town. You hate to get somewhere and that starter not crank that thing again. That's snug. The front one is now snug. Now let's tighten these things here.
There's one more thing for you, Robert.
What's that?
When it gets dark, can you just turn my wife's headlights on and drive that thing up and down the street? She's had great trouble with that car. I've changed the bulbs a number of times. I changed the direction of the beams a couple times, but they're just cracking. And I wonder if the lenses are.
Well, if the lenses are bad, you can see it.
Can't see anything wrong with the lenses.
All right, well, let's see. We'll drive it when it gets dark.
Just keep my car alive for 100,000 miles. I'm a happy man.
I hear you.
I never want another car in my life.
Yep, I know a few people that feel like that about these P80s.
I know that we're all stupid too.
Man, I like them myself. I don't want to have to own nothing else.
Yeah, but you like the good ones, you know, the take off like a rocket jobs.
Well, no, mine ain't take off with a rocket. It's keep gaining speed.
Well, I call this thing a limousine. I mean,
Oh man, they're real comfortable.
real comfortable. So when did you say you were going to be back again?
Like the very end of February.
Okay.
So it's not too far from now.
Okay. So the two things I need to talk to my wife about.
Now I need to tighten this bolt here. What's that?
One is the manual, two is the seats. Oh, hi.
We noticed that your driveway is moving a little.
I know you, your mother's home.
Yeah.
Can you help me with something?
Yeah. Okay. Just put it down.
Could you get something for me?
Yeah.
Robert, what is it you want? Do you want the, this is Robert DIY.
A floor jack.
Oh, we got anything that, it's gotta happen. I think we can subscribe it.
A floor jack.
Floor jack. Cool.
Before that.
You know what a floor jack is?
It's a jack with a long handle with 4 wheels on it.
A jack with a long handle,
And 4 wheels on it.
like 4-wheel, it's like, it's long, maybe yellow or,
Yeah, and it like lifts the car up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can we get it?
would you?
Yeah.
Well, that's nice of you.
No problem.
My God, you grew another 2 inches.
What do you
All right.
He's the
All
one that-
tight and done. Somebody went to get us a floor jack, one of the neighbors. You can see here, brake lines need to be replaced. And that's the way that mount is right now. The bolt's laying on the mount and it's totally blown out on the backside. But you need to jack the engine up to get that mount out of there. 17mm bolts. So let me get started trying to break those 2 bolts loose on the subframe. Then once I jack the engine up, I'll go ahead and remove that mount from there. And as you can see, harmonic balancer is starting to deteriorate. It's cracking, the rubber in it. And I can hear the floor jack coming. Yep, that's it. That's it. Thank you so much.
No problem.
I appreciate it.
Have a good day.
I'll be done with it in like a half hour.
Yeah.
All right. Jack the engine up. I put something between the jack and the pan. Don't want that hard jack on the pan to keep cracking. I broke these 2 14 bolts loose. Get them out of the way. This normally it stays in that guide there. I gotta break these 17s loose. I might be able to jack the engine up a little bit more so that I could get a good tool on that. Broke them loose with that 17mm and that breaker bar. Was able to get it in there with it jacked that high up. Then I got it spun loose with this Volvo 17 short extension. So those two bolts are loose and out. Really wet from the road. You wipe that off now. I can just lift this mount away from here. And as you can see, it is busted up pretty bad. Didn't fall apart like I thought it would. But I could probably tear it apart. Now I gotta get that pin out of there to release this lower piece from the mount and swap that over to the new mount. Just stick a screwdriver in there and pry it out like that. And it falls right off. See how torn up that mount is under there? Let me show you the new one. Here's the bottom of the new one compared to the old one. Let me go ahead and put that spacer on here and get it installed. Has two nubs in the bottom of the mount. They fall in this spacer piece like so. Now you put the clip on there. Now that the clip is on there, you want to place the mount in place. It's got 3 holes like that. And there's a couple holes in the subframe that mount falls into. And then the tip of it is guided on there. So to set it in place, if you got a bunch of grease and dirt down there, scrape it off with a putty knife. After you get those screwed down, torque them down, man, I would say probably 45 foot-pounds, 55 newton meters. And then lower the engine down so that they're lined up and torque those at 30 foot-pounds, 37 newton meters. As you can see, the mount is in. It's sitting up high. Jack's removed. This should make it feel smoother while you're driving the car around. This plastic piece was bowed out, so I rolled it in. I'm going to let it sit like that for 15-30 minutes before I put that nut like that on there, securing that, and put the wheel back on. Man, we got inner tie rod boots totally torn on that steering rack. Need to do something about that. And then the sway bar bushings are totally loose. I could stick a screwdriver through that sway bar bushing. I wonder if that makes noise when he's driving. Look at there. Put a screwdriver right through there. It's crazy. That's got to be banging a little bit when he drives. He might want to get those replaced. But definitely this inner tie rod in boot replaced to that steering rack. You can see the all-wheel drive system's disconnected on this car. Has no shaft in there. Back of that angle gear. Let's give this a few minutes and unroll that and put that nut on there. And it's sitting straight now. After we put the wheel on, torque it down, we'll be all done. Unless we decide to replace a starter here in a little while. And you see the holding pin for the rotor and the pin sticking out, the guide pin. Well, this wheel has a hole there and no holes in any other spot. So it only goes on one way unless you force it. So let's put that whole 6 o'clock position like that is and bolt this wheel on. Well, we're contemplating replacing the starter, which is not fun on this car because it's got an ATM and this tube goes over here like this. So that sucks about replacing the starter on this one. And we great torque those wheels. We need anti-sway bar bushings. We need the boots for the inner tie rods on the steering rack. It needs a seat controller for the driver's seat and wipers on here if he wants to make those right. See if we find anything else we want to mess with on this thing. The rear hatch does not lock and unlock with the doors, so it likely has a wire broken in the tailgate hinge. This seal up here is rusting out on this glass. I would recommend removing that before it gets worse. both sides, all the way across. This gasket here normally rusts out. I normally tear those out before they get stuck and rust up in there. And the parking brake doesn't seem to work. The driver of this C70 said that they feel that the headlights are not bright enough. They seem to be adjusted up just a little bit. Looks like they have an adjustment thing in there with a hex 6. So I'm gonna see if that will move the light beam at all. That's where the light beam is now. I'm gonna try to pull both of them down just a little bit. The driver's side down more than the passenger. Well, that little adjuster didn't seem to do anything. Let me pull the light out, see if I can find an adjuster inside the light. I got this driver's side down. It started out about here. I got it down to there. And what I had to do was pull the light out. Light comes out real easy. You could grab this little rod from right there. This little metal piece just slides in there and locks the light in place. So I pulled the light out, slid it out the assembly, and turned that thing counterclockwise. I unscrewed it about 4 or 5 turns. Now I'm gonna do the driver's side. So you grab this, you pull this up. Now you can reach your hand back there and massage the whole light assembly out. Of course, everything's better with 2 hands. And then you see this big one here, that turns with a T50 or an 8mm hex. I'm gonna turn it back about 4 turns and we'll see how far it drops that light beam. So we're gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4. Now let's put it back and see how far that beam has dropped down. That beam has dropped down a little bit lower than I wanted it to. So I'm gonna turn it up 1 turn and we'll see where it is there. All right, it came up just a little bit. So let's take this car for a drive and see how the headlights are on the ground. I think they were pitched a little high. Look like they're down on the road better, and I kind of like where they are. So let's see how they look on the road. See, they're hitting the road. They're not up in the weeds on the other side that much. Just on bounces. I think this is going to be better for her. I appreciate your time and thanks for watching. Like, share, and subscribe. And if you got any questions or need some immediate assistance or need some guidance through something, go ahead to my website and call or text me from my phone number that's on my website. So I appreciate you watching. Hope you all have a great day.